Hi, I'm Carmen. I'm a fellow ADHDer. I'm a certified ADHD life coach, and I'm also a teacher. And I'm the host of this podcast, Authentically ADHD. I created this podcast in order to help me reach my goal of helping as many ADHDers as I can to thrive instead of just survive. Are you ready to jump in? Let's get started. If you're new to our podcast, welcome to the tribe. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend your time with me because I know how valuable our time is. Especially if you have ADHD, your time can seem like it flies by. And I know that, the time you have is super valuable. So I don't want to waste 1 second of it. I have a juicy episode today, and I cannot wait to share it with you. But first, a word from a reviewer. This review comes from a new listener, and her name's Morgan. She states that I love the relatability of the content. It's so refreshing to relate to someone that can explain why my brain is the way it is sometimes. Definitely a must listen if you have or think you have ADHD. Thank you so much, Morgan. You are helping me with my goal of helping as many people with ADHD or ADHD tendencies or on any spectrum of any kind, really. I talk about all different types of mental health in this podcast. So it really, really helps me, and it makes me feel great that it's relatable, especially to you, Morgan. So I encourage you, listener, to share this podcast with somebody you feel that it would be useful to scroll up to the top and give it a quick rating. If you're on Apple Podcasts, shout out a few words and you'll definitely get a shout out on the podcast. So again, thank you, Morgan. And alrighty, let's dive into the content. So in today's episode, we are taking a deep dive into productivity. Why you feel like you never are productive enough. I will go through why we can't seem to start and or complete tasks that seem, quote unquote, just so simple, like dishes, for example, or whatever your dreaded doom pile is, laundry, dusting, mail, paper piles, even if it's just random decluttering in spaces in your home, such as, like the garage, the basement or attic, things where, stuff seems to accumulate and it can seem incredibly daunting. We'll talk about the reasons why we get stuck, why we can't start or finish these tasks, and why we walk past it day after day, telling ourselves that we will do it, which, ends up in shaming ourselves because inevitably we don't, because we can't, because of certain things in our brains, such as the ADHD and the reward loop in the brain. It's broken in the ADHD brain. We don't rest enough. We have to build in extra dopamine. We try to do too much, and that we also avoid tasks that cause uncomfortable emotions. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into each of these, but those are the main reasons why, besides hustling for our worthiness, that we can't seem to start or finish tasks and feel productive. Now, I want to remind you that a feeling is a sensation in your body. So when I say feel productive, what does that feel like in your body? Because accomplishment is more so the feeling that I'm aiming for. What about you? I invite you to go into your body, find productivity, and decide, is that how you want to feel, productive? Or is there another feeling that you want to pull in there? All right. So I know what you're thinking. The ADHD brain's reward loop is broken. Like, that's why we have to build in extra dopamine? Yes. In my research of the default mode network and the way that the reward system works in our brains is it's broken. And its main neurotransmitter is dopamine. You guessed it. So, from my research, from what I read, I will link it in the show notes, but it is very sciencey, and it took me a little bit to break it down. So, this is the simple way that I kind of broke it down. During the reward loop in the typically developing brain, so, let's just say we got Joe Schmo over here and he is typically developing and he sees dirty dishes in the sink. He washes them off, he puts them in the dishwasher. He gets a nice little reward of dopamine, the quote unquote feel good chemical, go through his body. In the ADHD brain, because of the interruptions of receiving and sending dopamine and the lack of ability to absorb dopamine in ADHD brains, the way that they develop, the reward loop for us, it's way shorter. We don't get rewards from things like daily tasks. We have to build in things to make it fun. We have to say, okay, I'm going to do this and then I can have that, like a treat. So, first I'm going to record this podcast and then I can go lay outside for a little bit. Like things like that and we have to build in that extra dopamine. That's the second reason why it's so hard to start is because dopamine is motivation. That's where your motivation comes from. And if we don't have the dopamine in the first place to get started, and then we also don't have the reward loop in our brains that intrinsically motivates us to do things, if we think about it, those neural pathways have been so worn down to get instant, fast dopamine from shopping, eating, scrolling, working out, over anything, addictive behavior, anything like that. That's what it leads to because we want that quick dopamine. And then the neural pathway that links that with being quote unquote lazy, that's worn pretty strong too because growing up with ADHD, that's just what people around us said we were. It's just what we seemed like we were. And it's because we don't know how to take advantage, or I didn't know how to take advantage of the dopamine in your brain. First of all, you have the most of it in the morning. So doing your harder tasks when you wake up, not right when you wake up, but a little after you've woken your brain up and caffeinated and treated your ADHD, whatever way that looks like for you, that's when it's the best time to get things done. Marathon runners, they run around 9 a.m. every day when they run. I looked that up. Things that like successful people do, it's things that have been built in as habits. So you're not just going to listen to this episode and all of a sudden become a productive person, especially if you already think of yourself as not a very productive person. So first, let's start believing that we're productive. Like, can you say it with me? I believe that I can be a person who is productive. Because if you just keep saying, I'm not productive, I suck at getting things done, I am just the most unproductive person, I procrastinate too much, you will never be a person who is productive. You just won't. Because all things start in the brain. And the brain's got to believe it. So you really have to believe, hey, guess what? We can build new neural pathways by building in that extra dopamine. And we can be productive people. So we got to build in that extra dopamine too. If that means that listening to your favorite podcast while you do the dishes, or putting a TV show on in the background that you really like while you fold the laundry, or giving yourself a reward after you do something that you really don't want to do. Building in that extra dopamine and those extra rewards is super important for any ADHD brain, really, adult or child. The next reason why productivity is hard and things like that is because we try to do too much. Most ADHDers are people pleasers by nature. If you're not, I am so happy for you. I am a recovering people pleaser. I used to say yes to everything. And guess what? You don't have to do that. You're a grown-ass adult, let me tell you, and you can do whatever you desire to do. You don't have to do whatever it is that you don't want to do. But the thing is that with ADHD, we have a nearsightedness to the future, and we don't have much of a sight at all when it comes to the far, far future. So we put too much on our plate for the upcoming week. Meanwhile, we set these goals during the year and then forget about them because we're time blind. And as we're filling our plates, we're getting more and more overwhelmed and more and more overwhelmed. And what does that lead to? Procrastination, avoidance, and numbing, usually. Procrastination is a big one. And the last reason is we avoid tasks and we don't start them because we know, our brains know that they're going to cause uncomfortable emotions. And our brains perceive uncomfortable emotions like they're going to kill us, literally. I'm so grateful for the way that our brains work because they were built to protect us. They were built to keep us alive and keep us safe. But sometimes that means that they perceive an emotion that's, I'm feeling unsure of myself or scared, but it's good fear, something that we need to be brave to. We often feel like we're going to die because that's what our brain is basically built to do. So we do have to reframe our brains around emotions and the task. Why is the task making you nervous? Why are you avoiding this task? Is the uncomfortable emotion boredom? Is the uncomfortable emotion, what is it? Maybe I invite you to write about it. Whatever it is that you want to improve on with your productivity, think about it. Now, an emotion came to your body. Get out a notebook and write all about those emotions. Okay? Because that's really the first step. And then do a to-do list download. Because, my friend, all of that does not belong in your brain. Your brain is not a storage locker, and that's why you can't think up there. That's why it's so cluttered, and you feel every day like you're stuck in a spin cycle. Get that shit out of your head. Get it all out on the paper. I promise you, you will feel so much better after you have gotten it all on paper. Because then you can look at it and you can say, all right, what are the facts here? What's the situation? Okay. What are the thoughts that I'm thinking about all of this? All right. And what emotion is that causing? Because it's driving my procrastination right now. So how can I reframe how I'm thinking about this situation, so that I can do it, or so I can decide that I don't want to do it? Because both are options, let me tell you. Either way, we love to avoid uncomfortable emotions. So just be very mindful about that. I never leave you guys without some tips and tricks and things that you can take with you and use literally tomorrow. There is a freebie in the show notes, and I'm going to say that being productive takes persistence, not consistency, and a community helps. So if you're interested in joining a community, go to my show notes and join Focused, the ADHD program for adults made by Kristen Carter for adults with ADHD. I have transformed so much in the last year from being in this program. It's so worth it, and the price for what you get is so valuable. So head to my show notes and click Join Focused. You get money off, and I get credited to my next month's account. It's a win-win-win because we're all growing and learning together. So keep that in mind in getting a community going. If you can't afford things like that right now, there's also a link for a free book club that I have going, and we are starting a new book soon. So click that link for more information. And then there's also a freebie down there for you because you know how I love to provide freebies. And I'm going to go through the great eight of managing productivity and getting shit done. Are you ready? All right. Number 1, manage your mind around time. Think time producing thoughts, okay? Don't try to tell yourself that I have enough time. I always have enough time. That is a toxic positive thought. You need to keep time visible because I'm going to tell you right now this morning from about 9 a.m. until maybe 11:30 a.m., time flew by. And then since then, it's been crawling like a turtle. Literally, ADHDers really have a very poor perception of time. So make it super visible for yourself and manage your mind around it. If you have terrible thoughts about time, you are never going to be productive, my friend. Number 2, expect procrastination and expect urges to do something else or change your plan. So after you get started, expect that you're going to want to get up to go do this, that, or the other thing. Like when I sit down to do my research, all of a sudden the entire work area that I'm in needs to be organized. Or I need to go upstairs and do all of the dishes. Or the entire bathroom needs to be cleaned. And it's because we are procrastinating. And we're using urges like, well, I have an urge to clean because I can't possibly work in this mess. Just expect those emotions and please just let those thoughts pass by and let them sit with you while you complete the task. It gets easier, I promise. It's hard in the beginning, it really is. Number 3, prepare to sit with uncomfortable emotions. While you're doing the task, you might feel bored. While you're doing the task, you might feel constrained or you might feel itching to get out of your seat. I suggest you plan it, whatever it is, in Pomodoro time. So that's 25-minute work sessions, and that's paired with 10-minute movement breaks, especially for people like who are hyperactive or who are like me, who are combo ADHD. We have restless factors, okay? I'm at a standing desk right now because we don't like to sit still. So just make sure that you're accommodating for yourself and that you're prepared to sit with those uncomfortable emotions. Number 4, define done. What are you working on? One thing. Remember, constrained down to one thing. We're not multitasking here. We're finishing one project. So define what done looks like for you. Define all of the details. What does done look like? For example, done for my podcast looks like recorded, published, then put in Canva with a video template, uploaded to Google, and published out to all of the other platforms that it goes to. That's what done looks like. Right podcast is not a great detailed done plan. Podcast done is not a good plan because our ADHD brains, they look at that and they say, I have no idea what that even means. I don't know where to start. So you literally need to define what done looks like. And then number 5, list out every single step. They don't have to be in order yet, but list out every single step that it's going to take to finish said task. Next, estimate the time for each small step. If you're very, very familiar with it and you know how long it takes, put down that time and times it by 2 or add a couple minutes. If it's something that you have done sparingly, not a lot, you're going to want to times that number by 2 or 3. And if it's something that you've never done, definitely times that number by 3, because we overestimate what we can get done in the short term, and we underestimate what we can get done in the long term. That is from Dr. Russell Barkley. I just had a brain blank for a second. He's one of the ADHD legends, and that's one of the things. He lovingly calls us time blind, which we are, so you need to estimate time for each step. And I'd suggest using a timer while you're doing those steps to make sure that's how it is. That's how much time like that it takes. Number 7, define the due date and the time. So, it could be done sometime next week. Our brains will wait until next week and ask, when's that project due again? Unless you are like, this thing is due, on the 21st at 6 p.m. So you can then, number 8, map out each of those steps in order from the time you're sitting, planning, until it's supposed to be done. Don't forget to put rest time, even if it's active rest, into that schedule. And make sure you are giving yourself grace, my friend. We have ADHD. It's hard. Every part of our lives is affected by it. And you are doing fantastic. Until next time, my friends, talk soon. Stay authentic. And we will talk again soon. That was a really awkward ending, but I am not going to delete it because that's authentically me, you guys. I just went to go end a sentence and I ended it really awkwardly. And I'm not going to edit that out. So until next time, stay authentic, friends.